I am always amazed and chuckle when I see members of the press arrive at the conclusion that it turns out those icky conservatives were right. And they don't want to admit it. They go through elaborate great pains to deny it is the case. They do not like to admit it. They prefer to run the other way. And when they do arrive at the conclusion, they try to pretend that they never actually, disagreed. This is a key paragraph from the New York Times. People familiar with the investigation of Hunter Biden said prosecutors had examined emails between Mr. Biden, Mr. Archer, and others about Burisma and other foreign business activity. Those emails were obtained by the New York Times from a cache of files that appear to have come from a laptop abandoned by Mr. Biden in a Delaware repair shop. The email and others in the cache were authenticated by people familiar with them and with the investigation. In some of the emails, Mr. Biden displayed a familiarity with FARA, the Foreign Agent Registration Act, and a desire to avoid triggering it. In one email to Mr. Archer in April 2014, Mr. Biden outlined his vision for working with Burisma. In the email, Hunter Biden indicated that the forthcoming announcement of a trip to Ukraine by Vice President Biden, who is referred to in the emails as my guy, but not by name, should be characterized as part of our advice and thinking, but what he will say and do is out of our hands. The New York Post had its account turned off on Twitter because it ran the story in 2020. A number of foreign policy experts came out in Politico, pushed by Jen Psaki, then of the Biden campaign, and assured everyone that it was a foreign intelligence disinformation campaign. A foreign intelligence disinformation campaign. Jen Psaki wanted everyone to know back in 2020 that the Hunter Biden story was Russian disinformation. Dozens of former intel officials say. Here's the story from Politico in October 19th, 2020, pushed by Natasha Bertrand, a progressive who has now moved to CNN. She was hostile to Donald Trump's campaign. She was hostile to Republicans. She's very helpful to Democrats. She helped collect the story, and now she's moved to CNN. More than 50 former senior intelligence officials have signed on to a letter outlining their belief that the recent disclosure of emails allegedly belonging to Joe Biden's son had the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation. The letter, signed on Monday, centered around a batch of documents released by the New York Post last week that purport to tie the Democratic nominee to his son Hunter's business dealings. Under the banner headline, Biden's secret emails, the Post reported it was given a copy of Hunter Biden's laptop hard drive by President Donald Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, who said he got it from a Mac shop owner in Delaware who also alerted the FBI. While the letter's signatories presented no new evidence, they said their national security experience had made them deeply suspicious that the Russian government played a significant role in the case, and cited several elements of the story that suggested the Kremlin's hand at work. If we are right, they said, this is Russia trying to influence how Americans vote in this election, and we believe strongly that Americans need to be aware of this. They included Jim Clapper, Mike Hayden, Leon Panetta, John Brennan, Thomas Finger, John McLaughlin, the former CIA deputy acting director, and the list goes on. Some very prominent names on this letter, which gave this letter credibility, which was used by the media and by Twitter to censor and silence the New York Post story. They turned off the New York Post's account. They did not want people to know about it. They were adamant it was Russian disinformation, and it turns out it was all true. All of it was true. The whole thing. What the New York Times now reveals is even more troubling. Let me read you the beginning of the story. In the year after he disclosed a federal investigation into his tax affairs in late 2020, President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, paid off a significant tax liability, even as a grand jury continued to gather evidence in a wide-ranging examination of his international business dealings, according to people familiar with the case. In other words, there's a grand jury involved now. Now, grand juries, you should know, they don't leak. The lawyers in the periphery may leak. The grand jurors, they're not talking. But as recently as last month, the federal grand jury heard testimony in Wilmington, Delaware from two witnesses, one of whom was a former employee of Hunter Biden, whose lawyer was later subpoenaed for financial records that reflected money Mr. Biden received from a Ukrainian energy company. The investigation, which began as a tax inquiry during the Obama administration, widened in 2018 to include possible criminal violations of tax law, as well as foreign lobbying and money laundering rules, according to the people familiar with the inquiry. How many people told you this was a lie? And, you know, the most troubling part of this is that members of the media who told you it was a lie are now pretending they never had anything to do with it. They're now pretending that there was never anything, that it was always known, or oh my gosh, we're shocked. I can't believe I've never heard of this story. They're absolute ignorance. Absolute ignorance. It turns out they were right. Now, there are a number of lessons here. First of all, Hunter Biden apparently used his dad's name regularly to get business. Question, did his dad know? There are indications in the emails on this laptop that have now been authenticated. There are questions that suggest maybe his father knew and was okay with Hunter using his name. Now, I got to tell you here, as an aside, your favorite son dies. And let's make no bones about it. Beau Biden was Joe Biden's favorite son. The surviving son and daughter both have issues. I mean, the daughter, we don't like to talk about people's private lives. She's had some issues, but not near as bad as Hunter Biden's issues. Hunter Biden is a crackhead who he's got mama's babies all over the place. He's been caught, all those pictures on his laptop with the prostitutes. He's not a great guy. He's had issues. Dad's beloved son is dead, and you are the black sheep of the family. I can kind of see Dad says, you know what? If it helps you get back on your feet, makes you some money, use my name. I can totally see him doing that. And I can also see Hunter Biden using it as a blank check to go out there and chum the water and make some money. One of the things that I think is missing here is if I recall right, was it Hunter Biden and John Kerry? Weren't they somehow tied together? John Kerry's like a stepson or some such? But so I can totally see Joe Biden letting his son, who he doesn't love as much as the other son, use his name, make amends, use my name, earn your living, and I can totally see the guy took advantage of it. But here's the thing. Joe Biden as well was a public servant for 50 years. And Joe Biden was clearly bringing in the money from somewhere and not just speeches. So was Hunter Biden giving his dad kickbacks? And that is the allegation in some of the emails. Not that Joe Biden just allowed Hunter Biden to use his name, but that Joe Biden expected to profit off of and be paid back some of what Hunter made. There are implications there, and that's one of the things the New York Post was highlighting back in 2020, and they all said, oh, it's a Russian disinformation campaign, turn off their account. The other issue here is that ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, Twitter, Facebook, they decided to outright censor it. They wanted to outright censor it. They wanted to block it. They wanted to suppress it. National Public Radio ran the story about how they would not be covering this Russian disinformation campaign. And all of you hicks and rubes who believe it is true, how dare you? How dare them? Will they apologize? Will they apologize? Will they say anything? Will they have any acknowledgement publicly that they got it wrong? I see Michael Isikoff, an investigative reporter, the other day. Oh my gosh, I can't believe these emails are real. I see Maggie Haberman at the New York Times using the "some said they weren't real." Will Twitter turn off Jen Psaki's account? Kyle Griffin, producer at MSNBC. No one should link to or share the New York Post report. You can discuss obvious flaws and unanswerable questions in the report without amplifying what appears to be disinformation. Ben Rhodes of the Obama White House Iran deal fame, the creative writer. The Republican freakout over not being able to spread disinformation unchecked demonstrates why you should not be able to spread disinformation unchecked. They know they have no political viability without the capacity to spread lies. Really? CNN. This is quoting James Clapper. To me, this is just classic textbook Soviet Russian tradecraft at work, according to James Clapper. The National Public Radio public editor. Why haven't you seen any stories from NPR about the New York Post Hunter Biden story? Read more. Quote, we don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories, and we don't want to waste the listeners' and readers' time on stories that are just pure distractions. Joy Reid, good for Joe Biden, no need to dignify a Russian hatchet job, strained through Rudy's utter brokenness with a response. We're not doing emails again, America. Politico, more than 50 former senior intelligence officials have signed on to a letter outlining their belief the recent disclosures of emails allegedly belonging to Joe Biden's son has all the classic earmarks of a Russian disinformation operation. That list goes on and on and on and on. Where will the apologies be, and when will they acknowledge it? There's no reason to believe them about anything if they're not willing to acknowledge they fell for spin, partisan spin, because they wanted to believe it. You know, ironically, do you know who kept the quietest in all of this at the time? The Trump administration. The Trump administration. Certainly there were people on the campaign, they relied on the New York Post email, but there turns out there was a federal investigation going on the entire time. And no one in the Trump administration said anything. Bill Barr himself afterwards, confirming the investigation, said they didn't want to influence the election. But the New York Post had the story and it was true. And the rest of the media piled on the New York Post, and social media blocked their account from sharing the truth because they were so eager to believe it was lies. When you've bought into the mythology of the Russians stealing the election, it's very easy to be persuaded to become the authoritarian you say Donald Trump is and censor the truth.